I was in the band with my best friend at the time, and I said, "What are you going to play?" He goes, "I'm going to play the flute." And I thought, "Flute? What the heck? Why are you going to play that?" He goes, "Well, it's really small. We can carry it around with us real easy, and it's easy to just leave in the locker." So I took flute too, and he lasted maybe 1 or 2 years, and I just kept with him. So, and I love the band director. His name was Mario Foster. I think he had played with Glenn Miller at one point. And the big thrill was he played in the State Fair band. So on Fair Day, which we all got in Texas at the time, I don't know that they still do that. Certainly not when we don't have the fair. But, we used to get out of school to go to Fair Day, and he'd be marching in the band. And we just thought that was the coolest thing. He played clarinet. I went to college in University of Colorado, Boulder.
Right.
I really wanted to go to San Francisco State because I just heard that was where the stuff was. And I knew there was a lot of, psychedelic and rock. And at that time, a lot of the music, the rock and roll, I wasn't totally into jazz. I was still listening to some rock but also not only that, I mean, that's where Rasan was, and the Ken Kesey bus and all those things. So I knew there was a lot of jazz out there too. And I mean, that's another story of naivety in a certain way. But my father, but back then it was I don't know if you remember this guy, S.I. Hayakawa. He was the president of the school, and he was a little bit of a lefty, especially for Texas. Dallas, my father goes, you're not going there. You can go anywhere else. And I picked Boulder, University of Boulder. I applied at Hart Music School. I applied at a couple of other places. I didn't want to go to North Texas because I wanted to get out of the state. I wanted to travel, get a little further away. Sure. I came back to Austin. I graduated in what was it? 77. 76 actually. The winter of 76. I came back in 77. I'd already met Rich Harney through my friend Stoney Savage. Mm-hmm. And Rich, I was on vacation or something. I came down here, and Rich had a room in this house up on Castle Hill, here in Austin. Mm-hmm. And Stoney had been telling me about him. We'd been in touch, and he goes, "You got to meet this guy. You're going to love him." And sure enough, we just woke up, we had a cup of coffee, and just took the coffee cups right to the piano and started playing. And so we had kind of that was the group. And those rehearsals, man, those were ridiculous. They'd go for 6-7 hours, and people would go do a gig. I remember like going to do a gig and then coming back and the rehearsal was still going on.
Wow.
Because none of us had those real good skills of writing. I mean, in the beginning. And we were just wanted to experiment. And that's exactly what it was. Let's all write music and try it. And we were all enthusiastic about, what people were doing. We were all exploring in our own ways. And it was just open forum. And I think the second or third year of that, John Mills came in. And then it got much, much better. There was somebody that actually knew how to write and knew how to rehearse. And Randy Zimmerman, the same, he came into the band, and those guys were not going to rehearse for 6 hours. And, I mean, they were way too busy for one, and they didn't need to. And so through Mills and Randy, I learned a little bit about rehearsing, and how to not just spend all single day working on a tune, and also show up with something a little more prepared than just, let's try this and see how it sounds. And no, could you change that note? Spend a whole day of composing it together. Sure. Well, those were really nice days too, because we had a lot of people that played so well, but really didn't read music and couldn't really write music, but they had musical ideas. And so it had a different kind of an energy and a different kind of a community feel. And I'm practicing one day, and I hear this knock on the door, and it's this elderly gentleman, Lawrence Wheatley, who was in DC for many, many years and ran a jam session at the One Step Down. And he lived a few floors below. And he goes, yeah, that sounds pretty good. And we jammed a little bit. He had a piano in his place. And he goes, I know this, a friend of mine who's just here. He just finished college and he's back. And I think y'all would get along really well. So why don't you come over for dinner next week? And I'll invite him too. He's a guitar player. I go down and it's Paul Ballenbach, the guitar player who's gone on with, he played with Joey DeFrancesco for many years. So we were already thinking about packing up. The reason being that my brother lived in France. He'd moved to France years ago and years before this. And he said, I just bought an apartment downstairs, this Rêve Chaussée. It used to be a horse stall, but they had sort of fixed it up. And he goes, well, would you like to come and live here for a year? And I thought, yeah, live in Paris for a year, because I definitely had that, expatriate, American expat jazz thing.
I've been so moved by your spirit and by your gentle soul. What does the word improvisation mean to you?
Well, what is today? Today's Wednesday, so it means making it up as we go along.
And after things resume to a degree that they do you see yourself staying here? Do you see yourself exploring more and bringing back more opportunities and gifts and music that you've had the opportunity to delve into?
I hope so, but one thing that I did learn being in Europe for so many years is that everything that I really loved there and that I celebrated, you find right here at home. All in a way. I mean, you're not playing festivals where you're opening for Ornette Coleman. That's not really, but people here, they're playing, they're opening, like John Mills opening for Eric Clapton, and there's tons of, it's really interesting if you were just to be in a very small place like we have been, how much wonderful and beauty there is in a small space. I mean, you don't have to go out and look for it in a certain way because it's all around you. That's something that I've learned. I can't wait to go back to Europe, but it's almost like you can't step in the same stream twice.